Welcome back to Loyalty Leaders Podcast. I'm David Feldman, chair of Loyalty Summit, and today I'm joined by Rob Burgess, who's the editor of Head for Points, based in the UK, and a very, very long time travel industry observer. And Rob's here to join me today to talk about the latest changes at British Airways, particularly in relation to status earning that's caused a little bit of a hubbub, as they'd say, over in the UK. Hi, Rob.
Hey, David. Good to see you.
A bit of a slow news week for you the last couple of weeks with the BA changes.
Yeah, it was all going really, really well up to about because BA slopped us out on the 30th of December, about 4 hours before I had to leave for Heathrow to get a flight to Dubai for New Year. So was a bit of a rush around. Luckily, we had nothing else to write about, of course, because it was 30th of December. So from that point of view, it all worked out. But yeah, there was, I think somebody realized at the last minute we had to give 90 days notice of changes, and therefore they had to whack it out before the end of the year. It's been very chaotic. I mean, what have I done? Jesus, Guardian, Independent, Telegraph, Mail, pretty much every major newspaper, Times, Financial Times I've done in the last week. So yeah, we've been everywhere talking about this. Mm-hmm. And it's caused, certainly across the more sort of middle class parts of the British media, shall we say, it's caused, the ripple effects have gone far further than little old Head for Points, shall we say. It's sort of caught a bit of a nerve. Maybe part of the reason is, oddly, that I think BA kind of forgot that a lot of journalists, especially travel journalists, actually have status. Actually earn status when going on assignment. So these people are personally affected by it. So they then, the airline generally expects the national press to give them a fair, easy ride. It's being written by someone who's just found out they're going to lose their own status at the end of the year, and they're not desperately happy either.
So for those that aren't up with the news, can you give us a quick rundown on what's happened and the major changes that BA did announce that sort of got everybody in a bit of a tiz?
Yeah, so fundamentally, the British Airways system as it stands is the total opposite to how the US airlines currently operate, which is that you earn a fixed number of points per flight you take. And that's roughly broken out into short haul versus long haul and economy versus business versus first class. You know exactly how many points you're going to earn from a specific flight, and you know exactly how many points you need for status. Now, because obviously different routes are priced differently, even over a similar distance, it has to be one of those things you could play around with quite a bit. So, there are some very, very cheap cities BA flies to, like Sofia in Bulgaria, which is just for various reasons remarkably cheap to go to. I mean, because Wizz Air is quite strong down there. And you can fly business class down there for about £250, about $350 return. And you do that 9 times, and you get a British Airways Gold Card. Whether it's worth going to Bulgaria 9 times is a different question. But you can play about it in ways like that. For people in the sort of miles and points community, there was a view you could get one status point for about every £2 or sort of $2.50-ish you spent. So you could earn a silver card, which was good enough for lounge access across one world for about £1,500 or about $2,500, and you could get a gold card for about £1,500, so about $3,500-4,000 US. Obviously, most people spent far more than that, but if you're really going for it on mileage runs, that's what you could get it for. Under the new structure, it's going to a full cash-based basis, except where it's not. It's not that simple. But as far as British Airways flights concerned, you'll need to spend £7,500 for silver status and £20,000 for gold. This is based on net fares. So excluding all airport taxes, which are pretty big in Europe, as you know. Airport fees, again, pretty big in Europe, as you know. So you need to add about 25% to that if you're flying business class, about 100% to that if you're flying in economy. So you could need to do about £40,000 worth, so about $50,000 worth of economy travel on British Airways in a year to get a gold card. The same gold card you could have got for about £3,000, or $3,500, $4,000 at the moment. So it is, literally 7 to 8 times increase in the amount of spend required if you're smart. Obviously, if people who were earning it naturally, it won't be 7 or 8 times as much, but it's going to be at least 3 to 4 times as much. If you're flying on partners, obviously BA doesn't see the fare data for most partners, so it's put in a very simple formula which basically makes partner flying worthless, effectively. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we're looking at some long-haul economy flights on a partner airline could earn as few as 100 tier points out of the 20,000 you'll now need to earn a gold card.
And just to be clear, Rob, what we're talking about here with the latest changes is all about the status earning changes for your elite levels. We're not talking about the points that you earn for, to be able to redeem for reward flights later on, because those changes previously happened, correct?
Those have previously been, but they moved to a revenue-based level last year. So, you're looking at six avios per pound spent if you're a base member, going up to 9 avios per pound if you're a gold member. But of course, there is a cut through from this, because when you lose your status next year, you'll be earning far fewer points on the flights you do take, if indeed you still choose to put your flights towards British Airways, and that's a different question. So
question for you then, Rob, is obviously British Airways is not the first to do this, and people familiar with US carriers, for example, and some other European carriers, these changes have, they essentially originated in the US, and they've spread out, where there's been certainly, I think, some fair criticism across the industry of, monkey see, monkey do, as opposed to any real innovation. Credit to American Airlines on this, that after initially just copying, Delta, for example, and Delta and United and American just basically doing whatever Delta did, American came up with an entire new system, which you can like or not like, depending on how it fits for you. But, their system, effectively acknowledged, look, we want to base the relationship more on the value that you contribute to the airline. And again, as you mentioned, the old US system wasn't the same as the old British Airways system, because the old US system was you earned status simply based on how many miles you flew, with a little bit of a bonus for premium cabins. British Airways has had the tier point system, which is very different. Much more, those familiar with status credits, Qantas, Cathay Pacific, for example, would be much more familiar with British Airways tier points. But tier points, effectively, as you said, there were certainly some sweet spots, but effectively rewarded you for the longer you flew and the more premium cabin you flew in, there was a significant multiplier. So it was already a bit more, if your goal was to reward premium cabin customers, tier points already did a better job than the old US model did.
It did. Now, and it was very clear, because you actually knew what you were going to get. There are real issues now in this. You don't even know. You can know exactly how many flights you're going to take in over a 12-month period, but you still won't know if that will get you status, because you don't know what you're going to pay for those flights.
And also, you're not in control of the fare. You can choose your flights, but you're not in control of the fare of the day and the cycles. And as you say, it's all well and good to say the price is the price, except the price isn't the price once you start excluding taxes and fees and things like that. One thing that American Airlines did that was interesting, and again, credit to them, even if you're critical of the system, but credit to them for trying something different to the rest of the industry, is that, there was a much larger contribution available now from spending on partners, co-brand cards, other avenues where American made high margin revenue from, other than necessarily bum in seat on flights. In fact, with American, you could earn your top status entirely from spending on the credit card if you want to spend $200,000 on your co-branded credit card. Now, a number of airlines have, over the recent years, included additional contribution from co-brand card spending toward status. What has British Airways done in regard to that? Have they sort of taken a leaf out of American Airlines book and just said, well, you can just earn it all by spending on the card? Or, what's their approach here?
No, fundamentally, they will try and they're trying to pretend they have, and they haven't. It's the most pathetically half-hearted offering you could imagine, I think. So, for example, you've been told that you'll be able to earn up to 2,500 tier points a year through credit card spend, but they're not actually saying what that will involve. They're not saying how many pounds you need to spend on your credit card to get one status point. So no one knows if they're going to need to spend 25, 50, 75, 100,000 pounds to trigger those 2,500 status points. And even then, 2,500 status points, that's literally 8% of what you need to get to earn a gold card. It's nothing. It's a third of a silver card, but even after you've got to 2,500 status points, there's still going to be 5,000 points short of a silver card. And that's still going to require about £10,000 of economy flights, or about £6,000-7,000 of business class flights to hit those 5,000 qualifying pounds. So it's just very half-hearted. They've also, for example, they're trying to bring in BA holidays on this. British Airways has got a growing tour operator business in the UK. So let's ignore the fact, start, you can only use this if you're in the UK or US, so it's not an option for any other country. So they're now saying, if you book a holiday through us, you can have one status point per £1 you spend. And on the face of it, actually, when I first read that, I thought, actually, yeah, that's not crap hot. I mean, if you know, 4 adults, well, 2 adults, 2 children, 4 business class fares, decent hotel, that could be, £10,000-15,000 to spend, put you a long way towards a gold card. You look at the small print, what actually happens is it's £1, 1 point per pound you spend, but it's split by every person on the booking, including children, even if their children do not have British Airways accounts. So if I take my wife and 2 kids away and spend £20,000 on a holiday, which you assume is a pretty aggressive chunk of business, I don't get a gold card. What happens is I get 5,000 tier points worth nothing. My wife gets 5,000 tier points worth nothing. My kids, obviously have no use for British Airways elite status, get 5,000 tier points, which is useless to them. So even that has been done in such a slipshod way that it doesn't work. Well, I quite like the American Airlines model is actually quite good, because it helps level the playing field somewhat between corporate travellers and leisure travellers. Now, part of the problem with the new BA system is that you can only really hit the status levels, the status spend levels, if you're flying business class all the time, paid for by your employer. And if you're flying business class all the time, you don't need status. It's kind of the one thing we never really say in this game. In truth, if you're flying business or first class all the time, you don't need airline status. All the perks that come with their status cards come with business or first class tickets. So you're in a weird position where the only people who will be earning status cards going forward, since it's basically impossible to spend £40,000 on economy flights in a year to get a gold card, to be honest, are people who are flying business class and getting the perks anyway. It's a very odd way of doing it. The other issue in the UK is that corporate route deals are very, very common here. Most big companies have a deal with British Airways whereby, as long as you basically force your travellers to fly on British Airways where they can, then the company gets a big rebate at the end of the year based on the British Airways spent. So if I'm working at Goldman Sachs and Goldman Sachs is making me fly on British Airways whenever I travel, even if it's in very expensive business class seats, where's the loyalty there? Where is the loyalty when I am contractually obliged by my employer to fly on a certain airline?
And that's where the paradox lies, right? Isn't it, Rob? Because if you have your Goldman Sachs employee on one side and you have your self-funded small business person on the other side, both of them ostensibly spending exactly the same, like sitting next to each other on the same flights all year long, buying exactly the same tickets, but one of them's on a managed corporate contract where BA is rebating a lot of the annual spend. So BA is actually, in that case, BA is actually making more revenue from the self-funded flyer than they are the managed corporate flyer. The managed corporate flyer doesn't actually have a choice or any agency in what airline they're flying. So therefore, the incentive of status isn't actually driving any incremental revenue to BA. But the self-funded flyer who's been sitting next to them all year long effectively generates more revenue for BA, and and they're the ones motivated by status. So you do have this juxtaposition, don't you? And it's interesting because, I mean, Rob, you've been at Loyalty Summit a number of times. You know, this is a hot topic, and I'm glad you brought it up because one of the issues and the takeaways from all these discussions over the last decade, particularly in relation to status. I mean, it also applies to award miles, but particularly in relation to status is, it doesn't really matter what your mechanism is for status, whether it's based on fare, whether it's based on miles, whether it's based on a tier credit table, whether it's based on the day of the week or the color of the customer's hair. I mean, or some random selection. The most important point is the velocity of earning towards status. That it's meaningful, that you actually believe to yourself, look, you know what? If I go to the effort of choosing British Airways as my airline as opposed to a competitor, if I make the effort of consolidating all my spend onto a primary carrier across the year, then do I have a reasonable belief that I will be reasonably rewarded for my spend with that airline? And if the earning velocity is sufficient, we know that loyalty works and status works as a hugely successful financial incentive to generate incremental revenue for the airline, and also as a major lock-in and retention mechanism. But we also know that if the goals are so high that they're ridiculous, that people will look at it and go, why would I bother? I'll just, I'll fly British Airways when it makes sense. I will fly somebody else when it makes sense. But I am not going to spend $1 more than I need to spend. Then I think you have a very real risk of erosion. And as you say, you do create this paradox where the only people generalizing that are likely to hit the top thresholds are the people who actually have the littlest agency and say in their choice of airline. Do you think, and just on top of that, we talked about this in another discussion the other day, that British Airways is up with the best of them in terms of selling everything that's commoditizable, whether it's lounge access, additional beds, whatever your elite status perk is, you can essentially purchase it either a la carte, or as you say, it comes with premium fare. And there's a lot more selection of premium fares available. With all that in mind, you've watched the industry for a very long time. And you hear a lot of feedback from both ends, the points and miles community, but also your industry, the industry folks. Do you think that there's a sense that BA overplayed their hand here a little bit, or perhaps that the changes are a little rushed? Or am I making the wrong sense?
Well, I can give you a good example of this. There is, a few years ago, we did a competition on the site on behalf of a transatlantic airline, which is not British Airways. And the company involved wants to find out the impact of the executive club and Avios on people's desire to fly British Airways. So the competition itself was this. It was a multiple choice question. Who would you prefer to fly business class to New York? And listed all the options. And what was interesting about the competition was, if you won the competition, the airline behind it would give you tickets on the airline. So British Airways didn't pay for this, but if you'd picked British Airways as your preferred carrier to go to New York in business class, the airline who was paying for the research would have bought you business class tickets on British Airways. Okay. And what happened was that the way that I've read about 20,000 entries in this competition, and we did it twice actually in different years. So it's a statistically valid set of data. British Airways was quite a long way down the list in terms of who would you fly with to New York in business class if we gave you a free pair of tickets and you could pick the carrier. And it was very clear from that, and indeed what else you see, that because BA's market share is actually far, far higher than this competition implied, people fly British Airways not because they are in love with the airline, because it's actually it's not the most greatest in many ways, but because they know if they fly it enough times a year and rack up enough status points, they can get lounge access, fast track, and other things that make their journey easier. And they will put up with the faults of the airline because the status perks are making it easier. You might be flying Virgin Atlantic or generally economy to New York. Virgin Atlantic may offer a better product and service, but if you've got a BA Silver card, you can use the lounge if you fly BA, and you don't have a lounge access if you fly Virgin. that will swing you back towards BA, even though you know it's not as good, because the overall package becomes more attractive. The problem here is that when people don't have status and aren't working towards status, it becomes a very simple, okay, I'm going to go to Frankfurt on Tuesday. Let's look at Lufthansa and BA side by side from Heathrow. Let's throw an EasyJet from Gatwick. And then we can look at those. They're all equal to me now because I won't have status of any of them. In truth, the number of miles you earn from the flight now is peanuts. You'll earn more miles from a credit card payment if you earn from much you do in the flight. So, there's giving up 100 avios from flying to Frankfurt is, not going to make any difference to anyone. And that's the problem. I think there's a bit of confusion in British Airways about how good they actually are as an airline, about how desperate people are to fly them. I mean, there are reasons that Four Seasons, Mandarin Oriental, Peninsula, etc., don't have these sort of points-based loyalty schemes, and it's because they fundamentally think they're so good, people will go and stay with them because of their brand name and reputation. And actually, it's true, they do. I mean, there's there's a reason Ryanair doesn't bother with point schemes, because people know they will have the cheapest fare, and that's the market they're going at, and they don't need to be offering points to do it. When you're in this kind of homogenized middle, which is where not only British Airways, Lufthansa, Air France, KLM floating, but also Hilton's, Marriott's, Holiday Inns of this world, the loyalty schemes are there to basically distort. The point of the loyalty scheme, in a positive way or negative way, is to distort people's choices when they come to make a purchase. And that's always worked in BA's favour, because the Executive Club has persuaded people to book on British Airways for reasons other than price, frequency, or indeed quality of what we get. And when you strip that away, the Emperor's, does the Emperor have any clothes on? I suppose is the question. And we're not entirely sure it does. Certainly, we're still flying still a lot of airplanes out there with the old dodgy business class seat in them. The A380 is not being refurbished for a while. 787's not being done. The Gatwick fleet not being done at all. There's a lot. Food's pretty bad compared to the rest of the transatlantic market. They don't try to compete with Qatar, Etihad, Emirates, Turkish these days. Going west, all the growth is still North America. Don't know is the answer, but I think it's very rare you'll meet a British Airways manager who's ever flown an airline other than British Airways in a premium cabin. Unfortunately,
how much of the furor right now do you discount? And it's important to discount a portion of this. How much do you discount as just being sort of traditional resistance to change for change's sake?
It's hard to. I mean, nobody is going to stop flying British Airways entirely because of this. I mean, somebody will. I mean, there are people who live in. I mean, British Airways has no flights apart from the London area. The only flights it has outside London are coming into London. So there are lots of people in, Scotland, Wales, Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle, who connect through London, partly because it helps them get status like that. Those people may just disappear off to KLM via Amsterdam, or start flying Emirates or Qatar from the local airport. That is business that could be lost. I mean, for me, I'm 45 minutes drive from Heathrow. It's about an hour and 15 to Gatwick, probably. I'm relatively ambivalent. If Heathrow is still easier for me. Most London professionals live in West London. That's what's nearer to Heathrow than it was nearer to Gatwick. But there's direct competition on most routes. Obviously, BA's got more slots than anybody else. BA normally has more daily frequencies to most places than anybody else. So, you have to go to Frankfurt. But it's a fair, it becomes more of a fair playing field now. If I need to go to Frankfurt, I can look at Lufthansa versus BA from Heathrow. If I'm honest, I won't go to Gatwick for EasyJet. The extra transfer time is not worth it for me. But Terminal 2 is nicer than Terminal 5. Number 1 lounge has just opened a new independent lounge in Terminal 2. There's the Plaza Premium Lounge in Terminal 2 at Heathrow is multi-award winning. There are good reasons for me to put back those flights to Lufthansa if the times and the pricing works. So It depends. But I mean, in truth, for us, a lot of places where British Airways is the only game in town, or the only one with decent frequencies. So you can't walk away entirely. But as we all know, the airline game is based around small 1 to 2% changes in load factor. Massive fixed costs. You don't need a lot of people to walk away to force you to start slashing your prices a bit, and then it starts getting a bit nasty.
I mean, when we've seen
I suppose the upside is it might just look forward. We might have to see forced improvements in other things, because if people are going to say, okay, people are only going to fly British Airways if they are going to get, food that's on a par of any other major airline, decent champagne, better amenity kits, lounges which don't have mice. I mean, there are more mice than people in returnable flight lounges most times. There's stuff growing in the showers there. It's not a great environment much of the time.
When we look at revenue-based changes that happen at other airlines, they haven't been risk-free. And again, airlines copied the US airlines certainly at the beginning of this, sort of game change. We've seen just in recent times, Delta basically, reverse course and press the pause button on major status qualification changes because they kind of overshot their shot. Now they sort of made clear we're just pressing pause. We're not saying we're not going to do it, but nonetheless, it was a pretty embarrassing about face. And behind the scenes, we know that American Express was not happy with the changes that Delta announced. There was discussions at the highest levels, and it came. The pressing of the pause button came from the highest level of Delta. We also know American Airlines. Go back 8 years, 7-8 years. When they made the mileage changes to the award mileage changes to revenue based, they actually had to disclose to the SEC a write down in forecasting co-brand revenue because people abandoned the co-brand card because they basically were just like, you know what, it's so not worth it anymore. We're giving up, and by giving up means we're no longer keeping our co-brand card. We're no longer enrolling and taking up the co-brand card. So these changes are not risk-free. And I think you did a good example of sort of painting the picture for the local market for BA. Just as we finish up, to your last point, have you had any sense, and it's the New Year break, so maybe there's an excuse for that, but have you had any sense from your contacts within British Airways or IAG in terms of how they're viewing some of the feedback, or they're eternally confident they've made the right decision? Any feedback from your contacts there?
It's difficult. This was pushed out. I mean, most staff were not briefed on it. A lot of call center staff were not being briefed on it. We believe there's a lot of internal problems around this. Fundamentally, you are effectively firing all your leisure customers. It's the corporate market isn't coming back. The airline has made a lot of moves about wanting to attract leisure passengers to replace corporate travellers. British Airways has been investing in what is fundamentally a premium-heavy fleet. There's very few economy seats on new long-haul aircraft coming in hundreds. So, the aircraft are dominated by business and premium economy seating. They need this sort of premium leisure market to fill a lot of that. And if that market goes soft, then there's trouble. There's also IAG Loyalty and British Airways are two separate companies in the same way that a lot of the American airlines have broken out their loyalty businesses. This is slightly tricky because this is mainly a British Airways thing. IAG Loyalty does not control BA's 2-point system. What's very odd about this is that we haven't seen Iberia, British Airways' sister airline of BA, doing anything. So BA is literally has gone rogue to that extent inside the IG. The IG airlines only move in step because we just all move to Iberia, and then say it's an Iberia, it would make a difference. Still getting Avios. Everything else is still in some business. So it's not clear how this is going to drop. What I understand is that they're meant to launch this twice in 24. They had to pull it because it wasn't ready. It's still clearly not ready. They can't announce the American Express deal. the deal with partners is just, I mean, it's like 1% as good as what American Airlines do. I quite like the American model. I mean, if you're going to do it, what American Airlines done is smart. It helps poor people into a broader mileage ecosystem. It gives leisure travelers a chance to, close some of the gap with corporate travelers who earn their tickets paid for them and haven't been paid for in higher ticket classes. There's just nothing. It's so badly thought through by people who generally have. I mean, the thing about it is that if you look at the announcement, there's a special offer in the announcement. Great, amazing deal. If you book flights now before the 1st of February for travel after April, they'll offer you I think it's 210 status points extra for a business class ticket. So if you book now a £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 ticket to travel after the 1st of April, you'll get 210 bonus status points. That is literally 1% of what you need for a gold card as a bonus. They're not giving you 10% of what you need, 10% of what you need. So it's 210 points out of what is now a target of 20,000 points to earn a gold card. I mean, that's, that's like, Starbucks saying, instead of buying 100 coffees and getting 10 free ones, you need to buy 99 coffees now to get 10 free coffees. It's also embarrassing. The fact you even bothered to put a page on your website promoting that is just a sign that no one's thought it through.
And there's some other textbook mistakes in the release as well. It's based on member feedback and things like that just scream amateur hour.
Yeah. It's just shocking. There's no, if you're going to fire your customers, no, to actually telling your customers you're firing because they actually asked to be fired.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. Yeah, people
doing this. Sorry.
But I was going to say, people respect programs a lot more when they just say, you know what, we're changing it. Some of you aren't going to be happy. We understand that. We would still love all of you to stay. Here's, let us educate you on some promotions and things like that. People respond much better than that, than basically, as you say, being fired and telling them that they asked for it, like you say. We are at time, Rob. Thanks so much for your time. I know we need to get away. I imagine we're going to have this conversation again very in the not too distant future to see where it's at. I think it's very much a case of watch this space. As you say, it's interesting that Iberia hasn't moved in lockstep. So I think it will be a very interesting space to continue to watch. Obviously, the next Loyalty Summit will be in London in June. So the next Travel Loyalty Summit. So I think it will be an interesting first 6 months of the year to sort of see, because these changes kick in April, right?
They kick in April, but I mean, it will be a slow kickoff, because if you've already earned status for next year, most people will say, I'm going to keep flying for a year. I'm like, I'm not going to retain my status, but I'll be stupid to not make the most of it for a year while I have it. So actually, it might be April 26 before you start seeing people moving away. And obviously, by that point, everybody involved in this will have left British Airways or got another job, and the people left picking up the mess will be, you and me and most people who do this permanently. But
I understand. Well, Rob Burgess, thank you so much for your insights. I know your phone has been ringing nonstop since this announcement dropped before New Year's, even on your vacation. But no doubt we will talk again soon and pick this topic up. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, David. Good to speak to you.